I never thought my marriage would come crashing down because of something left behind in the backseat of my car. But that's exactly how it happened. One afternoon, while climbing into my SUV, I noticed something wedged between the cup holder and my son's old baseball glove. At first, I thought it was just some piece of trash, but when I picked it up, my stomach twisted. It was a used condom, still warm, still damp, evidence of something I knew I hadn't done. For 15 years, I've worked as an insurance adjuster. My job has trained me to notice details, to spot the signs of accidents and lies people try to cover up. And right then, I knew this was no accident. My wife, Melody, had taken the car the day before, claiming hers was making strange noises. She said she was going out to buy supplies for the salon she owned. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now, I realized that errand was just an excuse. We'd been married for 18 years. I met her back when she was a hairstylist with dreams of owning her own place, and now she had built a successful business with several employees under her. I was proud of her, even though her late nights had become more frequent, and she often smelled of perfume and other people's secrets when she came home. But finding that condom was the kind of secret I could no longer ignore. When I walked into the kitchen that evening, Melody was stirring a pan of pasta sauce, smiling at me like everything was normal. For a moment, I almost let myself believe I was wrong, that I had imagined the whole thing. But I couldn't hold it in. I told her I found something strange in the car. Her hand paused on the spoon, just for a second, then she carried on cooking as if nothing had happened. She brushed it off, suggesting it must have been our teenage son, Blake. But I knew better. Blake had been at work the entire day before, still wearing his uniform when he came home. He barely had time for homework, let alone sneaking someone into the backseat of my car. No, this wasn't Blake. This was Melody. That night, I couldn't shake the thought of what I had found. Lying in bed next to Melody, who was lost in her phone's glow, I began to connect the dots. Years of insurance work had trained me to notice inconsistencies. Numbers don't lie, but people often do. I kept detailed mileage logs for tax purposes, a habit that now became crucial. Melody had told me she drove to the beauty supply store, which was about 12 miles away. A round trip should have been no more than 25 miles. Yet when I checked the odometer, the car had 38 additional miles on it. 13 miles unaccounted for. Where had she gone? Pulling up a map, I started tracing possible routes. Those extra miles could easily place her near Old Mill Road, a stretch of town lined with small garages and repair shops. The next morning, she claimed she had an early appointment at the salon and kissed me goodbye. But I couldn't ignore my growing suspicion. When she left, I went through her car. Not out of paranoia, I told myself, but because I needed the truth. The squealing brakes she'd mentioned were a simple fix, nothing more than worn pads. But inside her console, I found a folded receipt. Todd's Automotive. Brake service, $50, dated 3 days earlier. $50 for new brake pads. That was laughable. Anyone who had ever taken a car to a shop knew the job cost much more. Either Todd was running the most generous repair service in town, or Melody was paying in ways that didn't involve money. During my lunch break, I drove by Todd's Automotive. It was a shabby little place, tucked inside a converted gas station. I'd passed it dozens of times without thinking twice. But now, I couldn't look at it the same. Inside, the man behind the counter greeted me with a smirk, his shirt stained with grease. He looked like someone who'd been around Melody more than just once. I didn't need to ask questions. The way he mentioned her name, casually, too comfortably, was all the confirmation I needed. My wife wasn't just bringing her car in for repairs. Todd's shop was everything I expected. Oil-stained floors, hand-painted signs promising fast service, and a yard full of vehicles in various states of disassembly. What I didn't expect was Todd himself. He was around 40, solidly built, with arms that looked like they earned their strength from real work, not a gym. He had a sleeve of tattoos, a cocky grin, and the kind of rugged charm that women sometimes fall for. "Help you with something?" he asked, wiping his hands on a rag that looked older than both of us. I forced a polite smile. "Just looking around. My wife said you guys do good work." "What's her name?" "Maybe I remember her," he said. "Melody. Melody Brennan. Drives a blue Honda." That smile of his widened, and I hated the way it looked. "Oh yeah, Melody. Great lady. Real friendly." There was something in his tone that made my skin crawl. "She said you worked on her brakes," I replied evenly. He laughed, tossing the rag onto the counter. "We aim to please. Customer satisfaction's number one. Every muscle in my body wanted to lash out at him, but I held it in. Hitting him would only make me the fool. I wasn't here for a fight, I was here to build a case. I smiled back instead, as if I believed his little act, then walked out. That night, I made a plan. If Melody thought she could outsmart me, she was wrong. I ordered a GPS tracker online. For less than $40, I got a small device no bigger than a matchbox, capable of recording every move my car made. 2 days later, I slid it under the rear bumper of the Explorer, hidden perfectly near the spare tire. From then on, all I had to do was wait. The first time she borrowed the car again, I tracked her route in real time from my phone. Just as she said, she drove to the beauty supply warehouse. But after that, her path veered somewhere else, a small motel on the edge of town. She stayed there for 15 minutes before heading straight to Todd's shop for another 20. The pattern repeated the next time she took the car. Supplies, motel, garage, always in that order. It felt like my wife had turned her affair into a routine, almost like a twisted workout plan. Supplies, motel, garage, repeat. I didn't follow her inside, but I took photos of her car parked where it shouldn't be. It wasn't about spying, it was about gathering proof. Evidence that would hold up if this ended in divorce court. And at this point, it was clear that was where things were headed. The breaking point came one Thursday evening. Melody was curled up on the couch, her feet tucked beneath her, scrolling through her phone with that little smirk she used to reserve for family photos or funny videos. Now, it only made me uneasy. Her phone buzzed, and her smile widened. I asked casually who it was. She claimed it was just Sarah from the salon asking about the next day's schedule. But the messages kept coming, each buzz matched by another grin, and then even a giggle. Busy night for Sarah, I said, raising an eyebrow. She's just asking about the new inventory system, Melody replied quickly. Something in her tone gave her away. When she stepped into the bathroom, I picked up her phone and synced the conversation to our smart TV. Within seconds, the entire living room screen was lit up with her messages. Todd, can't stop thinking about this afternoon. You're incredible. Melody, you're not so bad yourself. Same time tomorrow. Todd, can't wait. Bring that thing you did with your. That's when Melody walked back into the room. She froze, staring at the oversized display of her affair spelled out in glowing letters. Dave, she gasped, lunging for the remote. But I was already holding it. Inventory system, I asked coldly. Is that what we're calling it now? Her face cycled through shock, anger, embarrassment, and finally indignation. You went through my phone. How dare you? How dare I? My voice rose as years of trust crumbled in an instant. You've been sneaking around with some mechanic in his garage, and you're angry at me for catching you. It's not what it looks like, she insisted. It looks exactly like what it is, I shot back. You're cheating on me with Todd from the auto shop. What part am I misunderstanding? She sank onto the couch, her posture collapsing as if someone had cut her strings. For a fleeting moment, I thought she might come clean. But instead, she reached for the oldest excuses in the book. Her defense wasn't denial, it was deflection. It's not about being close, she said, her voice shaking with frustration. It's about feeling appreciated. When's the last time you looked at me like I was beautiful? When's the last time you made me feel wanted? Her words stung, not because they were entirely wrong, but because they were being used to justify betrayal. I'm not the one glued to my phone, texting another man, I shot back. He's not my boyfriend, she muttered. It's complicated. I laughed bitterly. You know what's not complicated? 18 years of marriage, a son who looks up to both of us, a home we worked for. That's what's real. That's what matters. She met my gaze with something colder than guilt. A life that was already dying. When's the last time we did anything together? When's the last time we even had a real conversation? You come home, eat, sit in front of the TV, and go to bed. Every day. For years. She wasn't entirely wrong, but she wasn't right either. So your solution was to crawl into another man's arms. That's your fix. Todd makes me feel alive again, she fired back. He listens. He makes me laugh. He looks at me like I matter. Like I'm still beautiful. I've always thought those things, I said, my voice breaking. I've always seen you that way. No, Dave, you see me as convenient, she replied flatly. And there's a big difference. We sat in silence, staring at each other across a living room that suddenly felt like neutral ground instead of a home. The giant TV screen still glared between us, frozen on Todd's last message, bring that thing tomorrow. Finally, I asked, "So what now?" She looked at me and whispered, "I don't know." For the first time in months, her voice sounded stripped of excuses. It was the most honest thing she'd said in a long time. But I knew. I had spent my entire adult life analyzing risks and preparing for disasters, and this, my marriage unraveling, was a disaster that needed careful management. The very next day, I began my work. Research was my trade, and now it would be my weapon. Todd Garrison, 38 years old, owner of Todd's Automotive. Twice divorced, 2 sets of child support payments draining his income. Behind on taxes. And, it turned out, his business license had quietly expired months earlier. His insurance was void. His inspection certification had been suspended for shady practices that put unsafe cars back on the road. It was a goldmine. I made a few calls. 15 years in claims processing had left me with more than contacts, it had left me with leverage. The inspector who owed me a favor picked up on the first ring. "Todd's Automotive," I told him. "Old Mill Road, check if it's up to code." His laugh told me everything I needed. He promised me a week. While the wheels of bureaucracy turned, I focused on my second move. Melody's salon was preparing for its annual customer appreciation event, a big day with wine, hors d'oeuvres, discounts, and loyal clients packed wall to wall. I had a feeling Todd's reputation for personal service might interest that crowd. "I'll help set up," I offered casually one evening. Her eyes widened, surprised at the olive branch. For weeks we'd lived like polite strangers, sharing a bed without sharing much else. "Really?" she asked, careful not to sound too hopeful. "Sure," I said. "I've got a projector from work. You could run a slideshow, show off the salon, before and after photos of hairstyles." Her smile betrayed her calculations. Was this forgiveness? Reconciliation? She wanted to believe it was. But forgiveness wasn't what I had in mind. Documentation and exposure were. All week, I prepared the presentation. But my slides weren't about hair transformations. They told a different story, one in stark before and after. Her car parked at the motel. Her car at Todd's shop. Screenshots of their text messages. Receipts I'd lifted from her purse. Even GPS tracking data showing exactly when and where she had been. This wasn't just about catching her. This was about showing everyone who she really was. I had built a complete timeline of every lie Melody had told me over the past 2 months. I wasn't just relying on my suspicions anymore, I had proof. Photos, text messages, receipts, and even a recording of Todd bragging about his so-called conquest. He liked to talk, and luckily for me, he didn't realize that the guy installing his new speakers had casually left a phone recording nearby. By the time the salon's customer appreciation event arrived, I was ready. The room was full of her loyal clients, women who had trusted her with their hair and their secrets for years. I played the part of the supportive husband one last time, setting up the projector while she mingled and smiled. When Melody introduced me, her voice was cheerful, but I could sense a flicker of unease behind her eyes. The first slides were innocent enough: our wedding day, the grand opening of the salon, a sweet reminder of family milestones. Then came the turn. The next image showed her car parked outside a cheap motel on a day she was supposed to be out of town. The silence in the room was deafening. I told the crowd that Melody had always been committed to going above and beyond for her clients, though not in the way they thought. One by one, the slides revealed the truth. Messages between her and Todd, receipts for services her car didn't need, and even a photo of Todd himself culled from her phone. The women stared, whispering among themselves, their admiration for her quickly souring into judgment. Melody's face drained of color. She stammered, trying to deny it, but her words only made things worse. Her clients weren't buying it anymore. Some spoke up, their voices sharp with betrayal. Still, I wasn't finished. The final slide sealed everything: Todd's record. Fraud charges, convictions, a restraining order. I told the room this was the man she had risked her marriage, her family, and her reputation for. My words cut through the air like a blade, and for the first time in a long time, Melody had no response. She just stood there, exposed in front of everyone she thought would never doubt her. Just ask his ex-wives. The room erupted in chaos, women talking over one another, firing questions, and demanding explanations. Melody bolted for the bathroom, leaving me standing in front of her stunned clients with my slideshow still glowing behind me. Sarah, one of her oldest and most loyal customers, approached me carefully, like she was stepping through broken glass. "How long has this been going on?" she asked quietly. 2 months that I can prove," I said. Maybe longer. The next slide appeared, an audio recording. The screen showed nothing more than a play button labeled Todd's Greatest Hits. I pressed it, and Todd's voice filled the salon, grainy but unmistakable. "Man, this chick is crazy for me," Todd bragged. "Owns that fancy salon on Main Street. Married to some boring insurance guy. She comes by twice a week, sometimes 3. Can't get enough." His friend chuckled in the background. "Niece, she paying you for the car work? Are you kidding?" Todd laughed. "I charge her $50 to tighten a lug nut. She doesn't know a thing about cars, but she sure knows plenty about other things, if you catch my drift." Laughter followed. Then came the kicker. "Best part is she thinks it's some big romantic secret, like we're star-crossed lovers. I'm just keeping her happy until I figure out how much her husband's worth." The recording ended, leaving only the hum of hair dryers in the background and the sound of 35 women silently reassessing everything they thought they knew about Melody Brennan. "That son of a witch," Janet muttered finally. "Which one?" I asked. "Because there's more than one in this story." Just then, Melody stumbled out of the bathroom, her makeup smeared, her face blotchy and red. She looked around at the sea of clients who once admired her, now staring with faces twisted between pity and disgust. "This is my business," she said shakily. "These are my clients. You had no right." "I had every right," I replied firmly. "You're my wife. Or at least, you were." Her anger flared. Get out of my salon." I calmly unplugged the projector and packed it up, deliberate and slow, as though I had rehearsed this moment in my mind 100 times. "Actually," I said, meeting her eyes, "you'll find the lease on this place is in both our names. Jointly owned. I'll be discussing that with my lawyer first thing Monday morning." And with that, I left. I walked out into the fresh air, leaving behind the sound of Melody's entire world collapsing, the whispers, the accusations, the shame. It should have felt sweet. It should have felt like victory, justice served with a side of humiliation. But it didn't. It felt empty. The following week, word spread quickly. Todd's automotive was forced to shut down after authorities discovered he had been operating without the proper permits. That Tuesday evening was colder than usual, the kind of night where the chill in the air made everything feel sharper, heavier. Melody came to the house unannounced, her eyes swollen from crying, her posture less confident than I'd ever seen. She stood in the doorway like she was waiting for permission to enter a place that used to be hers. "Dave," she said softly, her voice breaking, "can we talk?" I didn't answer right away. I just watched her, remembering the woman I once married, the woman I once trusted with everything. She looked smaller now, fragile even, though part of me wondered if it was another performance meant to pull sympathy from me. Finally, I stepped aside and let her in. She walked into the living room, the same space where so much had unraveled months before. She sat on the edge of the couch, twisting her hands together, searching for words. "I lost everything," she whispered. "The salon, most of my friends, and you. I know I messed up, but I never thought it would all end like this." I stayed standing, arms crossed. "What did you expect, Melody? You made your choices. I just refused to cover them up." Her tears slipped down, but she didn't argue. "Todd used me. I see that now. He laughed at me, mocked me, and left me with nothing. And I hurt you, Dave, I hurt Blake too. I don't know if I can ever forgive myself." For a moment, the silence between us was heavy. I could feel the ache of 18 years, the memories we built, the good buried under the bad. But forgiveness, that felt impossible. "I'm not here for apologies," I said firmly. "I don't need your regret to move on. What's done is done. I just want to raise our son the best way I can, without this drama shadowing him." She nodded, her face collapsing into quiet sobs. "I hope one day he'll understand I loved him. And maybe one day, you'll remember that I loved you too." I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. She stood, wiped her face, and walked to the door. Before stepping out, she turned back with one last look, half longing, half defeat. Then she was gone. When the door closed, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't even relief. It was simply the sound of an ending, final and absolute. The truth is, life doesn't give neat closures. Sometimes the closest you get is a door shutting quietly on the past. And for me, that was enough. I was at the grocery store one evening, staring at rows of pasta sauce and debating which one to buy, when I heard laughter from the next aisle. It was a sound I knew well, one that still carried a sting even after everything that had happened. Melody was there with a few women from her salon, clustered around the wine section like a small committee. Her voice carried clearly. She was telling them how I had ruined her reputation, how I humiliated her just to feel powerful. One of the women tried to defend me, pointing out that she had been unfaithful. Melody brushed it off, insisting it wasn't about that. It was about me not being able to handle her success, about me resenting the life she had built for herself. Another woman cut in, reminding her bluntly that sneaking around with a mechanic wasn't independence, it was betrayal. I almost kept walking. I almost let them keep rewriting the story in hushed tones over wine bottles. But years of marriage and months of bitterness left me with little patience for silence. I turned the corner with my cart and greeted them. The women shifted uncomfortably, pretending to study labels, while Melody's face shifted through colors of anger and embarrassment. We exchanged words that carried more weight than the groceries around us. I reminded her that reputations were like credit, slow to build, easy to destroy, and often ruined by the very person who was supposed to protect them. She accused me of humiliating her, but I told her all I ever did was reveal the truth. That was my job in more ways than one. Standing in that aisle, surrounded by bottles of wine and unspoken regrets, we finally had the conversation we should have had months earlier. She admitted she had loved me once. I admitted the same, but then came the truth we both couldn't escape. She had chosen something else. She called it excitement, something different. I called it the reason she had thrown away nearly 2 decades of our life together. Her answer was quiet but firm. Those years had been fading anyway, she said. And maybe she was right. Or maybe it was just the excuse she needed. Maybe she was right. Maybe we had been drifting for years, living side by side without really living together. Maybe her affair wasn't the cause of our downfall but only the symptom of something that had already been dying quietly between us. But in the world we lived in, maybe, didn't matter. It didn't matter in courtrooms, it didn't matter when dividing up what was left of a family, and it didn't make the conversations with our son any easier. I told her she had all the different she could handle now. I turned to leave, but then paused, catching the flicker of hope in her eyes. It was as if she thought I might take it all back, the anger, the exposure, the way I laid her choices bare for everyone to see. I only told her that next time she wanted something new, she should try asking for it before sneaking around to find it. Then I left her there in the wine aisle with her friends, carrying whatever was left of her pride. Back at my apartment, I cooked dinner for one. My son was at her place that night, probably listening to her cry about how cruel I had become. And maybe she wasn't wrong. Maybe I had crossed a line when I turned her betrayal into public spectacle. Maybe I had become harsh, even vindictive. There were probably better ways to deal with betrayal than burning everything down. But as I sat there alone, eating pasta with cheap sauce in the quiet of my apartment, I realized I couldn't regret what I'd done. She had made her choice. And in a way, so had I. In the end, there were no real winners. A marriage that had lasted nearly 2 decades had unraveled, not just because of infidelity but because of silence, distance, and years of neglect. Melody found her escape in someone else's arms, and I found my voice in anger and exposure. Both of us were guilty in different ways, hers in breaking trust, mine in tearing her down so publicly. Our son would grow up with 2 homes instead of 1, carrying questions neither of us could fully answer. And I would carry the weight of knowing that, while I had been justified in my hurt, the way I handled it left scars deeper than I intended. Life moves forward, though. Broken promises don't mend easily, but they do teach lessons, about listening before it's too late, about speaking honestly instead of pretending everything is fine, and about how different isn't always better, just destructive when sought in the wrong place. Maybe love had faded long before Todd entered the picture. Maybe our marriage was already over, and the affair just made it official. What I know for certain is that betrayal changes everything. It doesn't just break trust, it changes who you are, who you become, and how you see the world. For me, the lesson was simple but hard: never let silence take the place of connection. Because if you do, one day you'll wake up realizing it's not an affair that ended your marriage, it's the absence of being truly seen and truly valued. Disclaimer: this story is a rewritten narrative created for educational and entertainment purposes only. Names, events, and situations have been altered or adapted to avoid copyright issues and to protect privacy. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events is purely coincidental. The intention is not to promote or justify infidelity, but to shed light on the emotions and consequences that surround it. Thank you for staying with me through this journey of betrayal, pain, and hard lessons. Stories like this aren't easy to tell, but they remind us that behind every broken marriage or affair, There are deeper truths about neglect, silence, and the need to feel wanted. I hope this story made you reflect on the importance of communication, appreciation, and honesty in relationships. Infidelity doesn't just happen out of nowhere, it grows in the empty spaces we leave unfilled. To everyone who has read or listened, I truly appreciate your time. Stay with us for more true-to-life stories that reveal the hidden struggles of love, marriage, and human connection. Your support means everything, and it's what keeps these stories alive. Thank you for listening to this story. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful infidelity stories to come.